I ask no favor for my sex. All I ask of our brethren is that they take their feet off our necks.
And that little girl was me.
Can I buy a vinyl?
You know, can I buy a?
And so when we're talking about facing challenges of people at high risk and targeted groups and minority population, it's trauma. So you got to think about what this person brings to the table. We're not always going to get it right. One thing that we as society don't want to appreciate anymore is apologizing. I apologize, I'm sorry. And so those words, I'm sorry, are so powerful. And so individuals don't expect everybody to get it right. But when you apologize and you're really listening to try to be better, then you do better. And
so well-versed and so phenomenal, whether you work on a register or you're in the C-suite, you have a skill set that's so needed that someone is willing to rent your time. They are leasing your time. Figure out your promise first, not your product. What is your promise?
Safely, when it's all said and done, the police is going to protect the state. And that is why the slaughter of Black bodies and Black people at the hands of the police is such an epidemic, because they are trained and they commit to a training of policing.
So my book is about my struggle, but how I overcame it. And to let Black women know, and just women of all colors. And I'm not going to just say that it's just for Black women, but Black women, we need this. It's okay to say, I'm not okay. It's okay to go get help. If you can't have a child, that means your vagina is no better or no worse than the next person. Okay? And
Happy Thursday. Welcome to Truth to Power. You have Dr. Matthews, which is the accountability specialist. You have Dr. Aurelia Johnson, which is the identity professor. And then you have Dean Snell, which is our political consultant. How are you guys doing? What's going on, people?
We good. It's Thursday.
I'm still watching these polls. You know, people get themselves out to the polls, so I'm enjoying seeing that on the news and these hearings with the Supreme Court Justice nominee is really taking up the news media right now. So,
right,
yeah.
Well, you know what though? I just find it interesting because the guest that we have that's coming on tonight, I think is going to be very befitting due to this election season, because he is going to lay some bricks on us tonight. And viewers, you guys want to make sure that you share this, because it's going to be some resourceful information that you all are going to need, and you may even need to use, or even family members. And so we have Mr. Drew Willey, that is the CEO of Restoring Justice. And so when I tell y'all he's gonna lay some bricks on us tonight, matter of fact, let's bring him in, honey, because it's about to get good, y'all.
Hey, Drew.
Hey, Drew.
What's going on?
How you doing?
Good. Thank y'all for having me.
Thanks for coming. Well, first of all, I was just letting the viewers know that this is a very important interview that is going to be very resourceful for them in order for them to leave with something, number one. So can you just kind of give us a little background as to what is it that you do?
Yeah, so at Restoring Justice, I mean, I'm a criminal defense attorney, so I practice in the courts, district courts, felony courts, as well as misdemeanor courts, as well as some outside of Harris County. But I consider myself a public defender, and really went into the work for the cause of the poor. And so when we bring representation to a high level for the poor, you know, unfortunately, a lot of the status quo judges and prosecutors don't really like that, because they're not used to it, because unfortunately there's a lot of corrupt systems going on within Harris County that are causing the quality of representation to the poor to be very low.
Oh, so clearly it's some shady business that's going on with these judges. So are we talking about the misdemeanor judges, or are we talking about these felony judges?
The misdemeanor judges are actually, you know, holding true to what the constituents voted them in to do, the Democrat constituents hoping for reform. They've settled the bail reform. They're moving towards a total system overhaul on the entire indigent defense system. Actually, on October 13th, a new MAC director, he was a directly impacted community member, Kenneth Hardin, who is a board member of Gideon's Promise that I'll talk about later. But he's going to be the new MAC director to forge a new day for indigent defense for misdemeanor courts. The felony judges is quite the opposite story.
Interesting. So, well, then let me ask you this. So, let's talk about the top guy, Ken Paxton, who's the Texas Attorney General and has been in recent news cycles for allegedly committing several crimes, right? But you the top guy. Okay. Then, can you explain what is the role of the Attorney General in Texas, and enlighten us about these allegations if you are aware of them? I'm sure you are.
Yeah, that's a really smart question, because the story of these district judges does kind of go back to that state level. And so, you know, Ken Paxton is the Attorney General. That role is the top prosecutor in Texas. And so he's the top law enforcement officer in Texas. And, you know, his connection to Harris County, well, let me back up, because his story, right, he was reelected a couple years ago, even after facing criminal accusations of fraud that he's still facing. So you've got a guy, let's remember he's a state entity. So he's a Republican, he's conservative, he's a white male, and he's accused of a crime, and he's not spent a single day in a cage because he's at the top of the power structure of law enforcement in Texas.
Sounds real correct.
This sounds kind of like the Republican governor of Florida who committed all of that Medicare fraud and got elected twice, and now he's the senator of Florida. It seems like Republicans just really don't have an issue.
Donald Trumpish.
Yeah, it seems like they don't have an issue with crime, with criminals, as long as they're white and it's white collar. Because if it's African Americans, it seems like they definitely are ready to throw us in the jailhouse.
They're gonna nail you to the cross.
Right.
I mean, Ken Paxton's story is a heavy hitter in comparison to those, right? I mean, just recently, 7 of his top aides accused him again, currently, of bribery and abuse of power. And his number 1 guy, his number 2 guy, quit. They wrote a letter and said, "We think he's committing crimes. Please come investigate him for bribery and abuse of office." and he quit. And so his other aides are still in this office, and he's hired someone new and just keeps running his office as if nothing's wrong.
You know what though? That's the same sapsucker that did that to sheriff, the first African-American sheriff in Jefferson County, Zena Stevens. They tried to charge her, but she came out clear. But he the main one running around here with that extra foolishness. That's the same dude, right?
Yeah, he even went so far to do some really like one of his campaign contributors made a criminal complaint. And so his office wouldn't do the investigation on it. And so he hired some outside counsel, like fake $300 an hour to just go do some shady subpoenas for him, just out of favor to one of his campaign contributors.
Okay, wait a minute. Hold on. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, so how is his office involved with Harris County right now?
Right, so it connects back to those district judges, the felony district judges, because there's a bail reform lawsuit going on. The misdemeanor judges settled their lawsuit. There's a felony level bail reform lawsuit going on that the mass of district judges are opposing it. And in opposing bail reform, the Attorney General's office, Ken Paxton, is representing the large majority of the district felony judges.
Oh, really? Okay, well then I got another question then. So how many of the judges are using Ken Paxton's office to represent them? And why would they do that?
Yeah, I was told over the weekend by one of the judges that there were 4 that were not using the AG's office. However, I checked the federal case records today, and I could only verify that 2. So anywhere from 2 to 4 out of 22 felony district judges are using, 2 to 4 are not using the AG's office. So that means critical mass are still going with this office.
Well, you know, since we took the power.
Right.
I just want to know. Drop them names.
Yeah, who are the 20 judges?
Yeah, so I'll run through it. And again, you know, I will say Democrats voted them in to be pro-reform, and they're sitting and doing the same thing that their Republican predecessors did.
And I'll say this real quick before you start saying those names, because see, now that I'm about to start taking this a bit personal, because these were people who we were going knocking on doors. These were people that we were bringing in to, you know, to support. I mean, I was pregnant over here block walking. Okay. Now I'm taking this so come on, drop them names.
So, and I'll just read off the website in order. You know, the people choosing to oppose bail reform and have the AG's office represent them in it: Judge Hazel Jones, Nikita Harmon, Robert Johnson, Kelly Johnson, Randy Roll, Deshaun Jones, Danny Lacayo, Abigail Anastasio, Jason Long, Greg Glass, Frank Aguilar, Chris Morton, Josh Hill, Hillary Unger, Lori Chambers Gray, Amy Martin, Herb Ritchie, Ramona Franklin, Jesse McClure, George Powell, and Brock Thomas. There were 2 judges that I could confirm were not using the AG's office. That's Judge Chuck Silverman and Judge Brian Warren. There could be 2 others that I missed, but yeah.
Well, what does that mean? So break that down for the people that are watching. What does that mean?
Yeah, so they, you know, the state entity that is made to defend them is the AG's office. However, they have every right. They get to choose whoever to defend them in lawsuits against them, even in their official capacity, even to the point of the commissioners have allowed them to pay for any attorney they want. So they get to choose anybody, but they have chosen to go with Ken Paxton's office to oppose bail reform on it. So that means that they are on the same side as statewide Republican conservatives on how they want to handle money bail in Harris County.
So they're showing their loyalty to the Republican Attorney General and not the people that voted them into office, basically.
Exactly.
Sound like some undercover Republican stuff to me.
And you know, some people have been saying that, like a lot of people who were probably Republican would go in and change their party and then run for office, but they still have those very same Republican Yeah, and you sweet talk the voters. I don't think enough of our constituents actually go and read up on these people and look at their records. So it's like you're pulling.
Well, how could they? I mean, that's the sad thing is they're putting up on their websites, I'm a reformist Democrat, and they're getting in office, and then they're doing the exact same things. They're just letting the status quo roll through.
This is the issue. The issue is that a lot of our grassroots people, they really don't know what resources for data that they need to actually go to look up this information. And then when endorsement screenings happen, you charge them up. You see what I'm saying? Now it's a new day. So this is everybody that's watching this, we have to hold these judges accountable because this is unacceptable.
Now, just break it down though, just a little bit more for the people that are watching. So we hear you say, you talk about bail reform. You're talking about these felony judges who are in cahoots, I guess, with Ken Paxton's office. And what are those implications, right? Like, just break it down in layman's terms. What does that mean for people who are currently locked up?
Yeah, it means that if you can't afford an attorney, if you can't afford bail, which unfortunately with the historical oppression in America, we all know, reparations are needed. And there is a reason that unfortunately the disparities to the poor is the disparities to people of color. And what that means is when they're accused of crimes, they're then sitting in front of a judge who's getting to choose the defense attorney that is handling their case, who is not doing a good job, and who won't argue for lower bond. When if you have money and you can get out on bond and hire a good attorney and prepare your defense, then you're in a completely 180 situation in front of the prosecutor, in front of the judge, in front of any potential jury. And so when you start talking about honoring the Constitution to all people, well, it's not being honored to the poor people of color. So practically, and I know you were trying to drill me down, practically what it means is that if I'm poor and I'm accused of a crime, I'm going to sit in jail pre-trial, even though I'm legally innocent, unless proven guilty. I'm going to sit in a cage and suffer punishment before I've been proven guilty of anything. While if you have money, you're able to walk the streets and prepare a defense.
Cold-blooded, and I've seen this with my own eyes. Okay, so for our viewers, can you tell us once again how many Harris County felony judges is it? And also, do we know which ones are against reform, or are they acting as a group?
For the most part, we can assume they're acting as a group. There's 22 district judges, anywhere from 2 to 4, that's it, are in support of bail reform. I can say Chuck Silverman and Brian Warren are in support of bail reform. I can't validate anybody else. So there's a 20 of 22 that I today can validate are opposed to bail reform, meaning they want people locked in cages merely because they're too poor to afford bail or a good attorney.
Interesting. Okay, so then let me ask you this then, because I noticed that you stated earlier, and Aurelia kind of had some questions about that too, with them appointing attorneys and things of that such. So like, can you explain that process of appointing attorneys to indigent defense cases? Because it sounds like to me it's some shady business going on with that.
Right. So right now, for 20 years, there's been best practices that says a judge should not appoint the defense attorney that is providing counsel to the poor. Harris County has ignored those practices for 20 years and has allowed the district judges to appoint whoever they want. There's a public defender's office that another judicial complaint has been filed against Judge Amy Martin and Robert Johnson for, the law requires that they prioritize appointing the PDO, the public defender's office. They're not. They're appointing their friends. They've each got 2 friends that sit in their courtroom, and they appoint all the cases. They appoint anywhere from 300, 400, 500 cases a year, and those court-appointed attorneys collect anywhere from $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 a year, just not leaving the courtroom ever, not investigating any cases, not making any arguments, not listening to the defendant's stories, just saying, here's what the police said against you. You should sign a plea paperwork to send you to prison. And if you don't, I'm going to snatch the paper away from you and do no more work for you and let you go back to your cage for another 3 months.
And we know most people that once they're in that jail cell, they tend to do whatever they need to do to get out. That's a big problem, and that's really something that I guess I think people not just need to know, but that's something that they need to know, and they need to make some actions happen. Because if that's the case, I mean, we're looking at mass incarceration on a local level.
That's the plan. That's the plan from what he's saying. So, well, then, because I've heard this before too, and this is, with me doing the accountability stuff, guys, and I've heard a lot of inmates when I would go and walk Harris County Jail, and they would say things, pay for play system. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that, Drew, because I heard them tell me this, and I want to get your opinion on what is the pay for play system.
Yeah, Georgetown Law School did a publication that talking about how Harris County, they did a study in Harris County, and there's a pay for play system still going on. And what that means is the attorney being appointed cases is funding the judge's campaigns. And in these complaints that get filed, even said like, hey, from the defense attorney's perspective, you've got a 27,000% return on the amount. If you give $1 to that judge, they're going to appoint you enough cases that will well pay for whatever contributions you made. And so the judges padded their campaigns while the defense attorneys are making hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars off the backs of poor people sitting in cages.
Ooh, so we got somebody that's in Harris County that's making a shitload of money
off of people going to jail.
Yeah.
And the data is all public. It's all on TIDC's website, Texas Indigent Defense Commission. So
who is, I just have to ask this question because see, we're all about truth here. Yeah. Who is the attorney that's making all the money in Harris County?
There's one who's the, quote, most overloaded court-appointed attorney in Texas, who in 2019 had 583 felonies on top of 13 capital murder cases. And he made, I think it was just shy of $500,000 a year that year. And his name's Jerome Godinich, and he's being appointed by Amy Martin, who happens to have been his mitigation specialist on capital murder case. So they worked together before she went on the bench. On cases that the prior Republican judge, Judge Jim Wallace, who was one of the worst ones, appointed Jerome and Amy together on this case. And she ran as a Democrat. She's got a police officer judge. So, is she pro-mass incarceration or not? She's actively pursuing opposing reform efforts, bail reform and court-appointed attorney reform.
What? You know what? I wonder if this is a statewide issue.
Yes.
And
I'm sorry, but that goes back to
one question real quick. So why do excessive caseloads matter then?
Right. So that meet 'em and plead 'em process. The judge wants their docket turned over. Jerome Godinich wants people signing plea paperwork so he can turn in more vouchers to make more money. And so he doesn't work cases, right? He doesn't meet with his clients, listen to their story enough because he has too many cases. The judge appoints him 500 cases. He just doesn't have the time. There's no way. The Texas Indigent Defense Commission in 2014 or 15 published a report that said, in order to be adequate, you can only handle 128 felonies in a year. So compare that to 583. I mean, I don't care what profession you're in. You just overwork.
So let me say this to the audience, right? And so let me come from a sociological perspective. When you're listening to Mr. Willey, what you need to realize is that we live in a society that's based off structural functionalism, right? Structural functionalism says that no part is greater than the whole, that our society is infallible, and that if you are not capable of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, i.e. no longer being able to be poor, you are a dysfunction in society. And when you are a dysfunction in society, society says we need to, and we have every right to, lock those people up and to make as much money off of those people systemically, right? So we have to think about that in that kind of perspective. This is a whole lot of information that you have to deconstruct, and that's one of the ways that you need to be thinking about it. Like, this is structural functionalism at its best.
And legally, America's Constitution, the Sixth Amendment, requires that not happen. That what you just described, it dictates it. So they're violating the law by doing that.
Well, what is the demographic of people, like demographics wise? Because you said there's like he handles 583 cases. Like, what is the demographic of people that's being locked up? Like the areas that they come from. If you have that information.
Ooh, yeah, that's gonna be. We're gonna have to get the legal and sociology together to answer that. I mean, look, our organization office is out of the Fifth Ward. We do that on purpose because we know, and it's shown through that this is the community that is connected to the jail. I mean, Fifth Ward, Cashmere Gardens, Acres Homes, Sunnyside. I mean, my step into this whole justice fight was off of when the Super Bowl was happening here, and they did that gang injunction over in South Lawn, and that all of a sudden they want to label every young black man as a gang member and wipe them out of the area just because they maybe kicked over a trash can. So, I can't speak to data on that, but what I can say is just from my long experience, it's primarily black and brown, poor communities that are bearing the brunt of this corruption.
And this also goes back to realizing that everybody that has a D behind their name isn't always going to be for you. Because when I remember I lived in Texas at the time when all of those judges were elected, and everybody was like, okay, things are going to change as far as reform is concerned. And from what you're saying, it's the same thing, but it seems like these people are still playing to the system. They didn't come in to change anything. I think you said Amy Martin. Was it Amy Martin that was like you said she was a Republican, or she?
I'm sorry, no, she's a Democrat, but she's actively involved in opposing the reforms that the Democrats voted her into office to implement.
That's it. Okay.
So can you explain that word reform? Because sometimes I think that people get it confused with revolution, and they're not the same thing.
Right. Reform. It's funny because you asked that, because to me, reform, all we're asking for with reform is just follow the Constitution, right? You can't be in a cage just because you don't have enough money to get out. I mean, that's, it's not debtor's prison. It's wealth. You can't treat people differently because of their economic circumstances. I mean, that's just basic tenets, and we're throwing people in cages on a systemic basis for that reason, which then feeds to inadequate counsel, right? So by reform, we're basically saying, Democrats, come in and please follow the Constitution. Give people good attorneys, and don't hold people in cages just because they're poor. If you just do those two things are the only two reforms we're asking. And, Dr. Candace, on the flip side, please don't use this ridiculously corrupt AG, Ken Paxton, in your efforts to oppose these reforms, which are not revolutions.
Right.
So what can our audience do tonight to help fix these judges' action?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I want to hand it to, the Commissioner's Court. They are a place where they are actively seeking reform. There is an avenue for them to impose caseload limits on these court-appointed attorneys. They've not quite taken action yet to do so, and we are pushing them to. And so we've got a petition campaign. And so restoringjustice.org/caseload limits is the website to sign the petition. So they can do that and be a part of asking, it's, hey, these judges are not acting. We know they're not going to act. We know they're corrupt. So Commissioner's Court, please come in and save that, right? I mean, Civil Rights Act didn't get passed until the federal government stepped in and fixed it for the state. It's the same kind of thing. Commissioners, we need you to step into these courtrooms and fix this issue. And so we've got to make it loud enough for the commissioners to finally listen and finally act. And so we're hoping that can happen sooner than later. It's again, that website is restoringjustice.org/caseload limits. I will also plug again. Y'all have spoken so much about what are the real effects. There is a Twitter feed. It's a different organization, Texas Jail Project. So Twitter @TX Jail Project. They've done a really awesome series where they've been taking complaints, right? And just to take, if I've got a few minutes, if that's okay.
No.
To read the words of the people that this system is harming. It's like, quote, "My attorney said you got to plead guilty and take whatever the prosecutor is offering. How are you helping me in my situation? She doesn't give me attorney visits. She doesn't come talk to me. She doesn't write me letters. She doesn't do anything. It's been 11 months since I've been to court. Attorneys should work for you. My opinion is most court appointees try to get a conviction for the court that they're working in, and they don't really work for you unless you have money. My attorney hasn't filed for a motion for discovery or a motion to request evidence." That's one quote of 15 that they've posted, and they actually have the recordings. You can hear their voices in voicemail describing how desperate they are for a good attorney. So again, @TX Jail Project on Twitter, you can hear the words of the people that are being harmed by this system.
I mean, it just sounds like railroading, right? So the movie, what was that, with Jamie Foxx and Michael B. Jordan, right? When Just Mercy, right? Or, it's very symbolic and representative of the Central Park Five, right? And so many other cases that, these poor folks in particular, Black men, Black and brown people who do not have the money, who can't afford this representation, they're just being railroaded by the system.
And this and that's been going on for years, though. For decades, where African Americans we're always at the bottom of the totem pole. We never get the justice that we deserve. So many, we're seeing now where so many Black people have spent 20, 30, 40 years in prison, and it was because the attorney that was appointed to them, only thing they really cared about was, doing the bare minimum and getting this person out of my face so I can move to the next case.
Right, like Centoya Brown. I mean, it's just
well, based on what Drew is saying, this is what I get from this. Now, I don't know if y'all know this, but Texas has a contract with private prisons, right? And so what happens is that if Texas does not fill those beds, right, that means Texas has to pay the private prisons. So now it makes sense as to why we're seeing this type of behavior with these judges, because these judges are part of the infrastructure of filling those beds.
So it seems like no matter who you put into place, it's always going to be the same thing. So it seems like you have to change the whole idea the whole thing with this whole Texas having that contract with the private prisons. Because as long as that's going on, you're going to always see this, no matter who you put in place. That's what it seems like.
It sounds like this is not a matter of reform. This is a matter of abolition.
Right.
Right? This needs to be an abolitionist movement at this point, especially when you're talking about the 13th Amendment, which quote unquote abolished slavery in the United States, except right, under the penalty of law. Like if you are a prisoner, then you are, can still be considered a slave. That's what it sounds like to me.
And you have people in Harris County right now that I've actually seen with my own eyes with me walking in that jail and had no attorneys have came to see those people that's locked up in that jail and been there forever. And they actually have what's that list where they have the list of all the judges that have people that are in Harris County jail with non-violent charges. The only reason why they can't get out because they don't have any money. Yeah, people, y'all need to listen to this because this is what you're going through right now. We want you all to leave with something tonight.
Yeah, the Texas Criminal Justice Coalition has the reports on what pretrial detainees and ranks the judges. We're doing similar reports for appointments that are coming out as the county is doing information. And I will say, I mean, I'm very aware of the historical linkages to slavery and to mass incarceration. So I 1,000% am an abolitionist for that exact reason. And again, what the judges are doing, I mean, take Amy Martin's court, for example. I mean, she has the power. Jim Wallace was in control. She takes over the bench. Her courtroom is not a different courtroom. She's still the 263rd District Court. She has the ability to go back and look, hey, Jim Wallace, Republican, you sentenced someone to 99 years in prison. That's not right. That's excessive according to the Constitution. I'm going to call them back in under a writ and I'm going to adjust their prison sentence, right? These district court judges have the power to fight against mass incarceration. They just actively choose not to because the voters are not asking them to. Like nobody's asking, even currently, nobody's asking these district judges, go review all your cases where the person's already been convicted and get them out of prison if they shouldn't be in prison. Everyone's just asking, like, please don't throw people in prison too long now. Well, there's people in prison every single day wrongfully for this. So go back and review those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the DA then was doing when they were reviewing these people. DA Kim All, remember they were going back reviewing all those cases, and George Floyd was in one of them.
Yeah,
that was wrongfully accused. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean that to me is a duty of theirs when they take that office. But nobody, I mean, I've even got some friends running for district judge that I haven't even suggested that idea to yet because it's too revolutionary, right? Again, like, well, it should just be putting things back in line with the Constitution, even with its flaws. But I
mean, so what can the layperson do, right? What can the average Texan do to A, understand the Constitution, and to B, take some type of abolitionist step?
So I appreciate that question because I'm going to shamelessly plug my organization because like we have been built to try to be that answer. And so, you know, these court-appointed attorneys, we are trying to step in and not let people fall through the cracks. I mean, one of our clients, the court-appointed attorney, said, you can do no better than 25 years prison. We step in, we advocated for his release on bond. We got his family involved. We found a place for him to stay. We got him out on bond. He prepared a defense with us. We actively investigated. We filed motions. We defended his rights. Come to find out, he never should have been arrested. 25 years prison turned into a dismissal when we did what was right. And the thing there that changed that story was the answer to the question you asked. What can the layperson do? The only reason we were able to take that case is because a layperson came along and said, I want to volunteer and be this person's brother and sister. That's a program we have where we have community members come stand with our clients in these situations. So we take the cases away from the court-appointed attorney. We let the community members stand with them and be a part of individuals, people's story for freedom that we then, right, walk them through. Well, this is what the Constitution is supposed to show for this person. I myself have a story of redemption. I did not know all of this. I was an ignorant, middle-class, white, conservative man before knowing through the eyes of one person Marvin Lee Wilson, and he was murdered by the state of Texas when I was in law school. But when I saw what the system did to him, I was redeemed. And so any community member that wants to walk with an individual person in their path to freedom will realize how broken the system is.
Wow.
So explain that a little more. What does that mean for volunteer? Like walk us through that.
Yes, a volunteer comes in. So we've got a full-time staff member. He's our brother-sister coordinator, sits with you, meets with you. You know, we're not going to put anybody in situations they're not comfortable with. And then we pair you with a client. And if we're doing our job right, only one meeting at most will happen inside jail, because we'll get them out, grab a coffee, right? Understand that there's real trauma going on when you're facing pending criminal cases. So we've got counselors and social workers. So we don't ask these community members to be their lawyer. They don't have to be their counselor. They don't have to be their social worker, because we've got all that taken care of. They've just got to sit across the table from somebody and say, we stand for you. And I want to learn from you and learn from your experiences. And if they're willing to do that, that's why we're kind of a bottom-up approach, been kind of pegged as voice for the people, because we, at the end of the day, it matters to that one, right? That one person matters, and we're going to ensure that it matters to them. We can't catch everybody. Maybe someday we will, but we're going to do that hard work on the individual basis until we keep praying for the system to change.
Well, clearly a magnifying glass need to be set on Harris County felony judges.
And that's why I appreciate you bringing me on, because we can't do the individual and the magnifying glass. And we know we've got the stories. I can tell you about it, but we need help to hold them accountable. So again, there'll be other campaigns. If they signed a petition, we can throw out judges' emails and them start loudly sending emails to be able to tell them they want systemic change. So we can work together on campaigns like that too.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, I tell you one thing, Drew, we thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Enlightening us with all of this information, because one thing that we are for sure with Truth to Power, we want people to leave with resources, with knowing that, hey, this is what's happening, this is what you need to be aware of, and especially during this election season, because you need to know who you're voting for.
Well, and since you brought that up, if you give me another 30 seconds.
Yes, sir.
In doing that individual representation, we actually, I personally was attacked by one of the felony judges trying to threaten criminal prosecution on me. And so we had to change our whole intake system. And so if anyone out there, we are actively taking intake. So if anyone out there knows of someone hurting inside Harris County Jail with an overloaded attorney, please call us 844-7-FREE-ME. Again, 844-7-FREE-ME, and we will add them to our list of possible clients that we can take on.
Wow. Wait a minute. You telling me you had a felony judge that threatened prosecution on you?
Yeah. We actually filed, and I had to appeal in federal court a lawsuit to try to fix that. So
is that public record?
Yes.
So who's the judge?
Amy Martin.
I knew it. God dang it. I knew it.
I think what you just have to take away from this is abolition comes with a cost, right? When you start going up against the system and you start fighting systematic oppression and racism, sexism, misogyny, all of these things, people are going to come for you, especially when you are making waves. Like, this is not a new thing. This is how America works. This is historic. This is a pattern of behavior. So with that being said, do not be afraid to still fight for your freedom. Because if you don't, you could very well become one of these people that Drew is working to help.
And it's a real fight. I think that's what people sometimes forget, is there's this talk of reform. Reform is needed because there's real oppressors standing on people's necks, right? And those oppressors need to be called out, and they need to be named and they need to be stopped. And so we're doing that and trying to do that. And we can use all the help we can get.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm
just speechless. Like Drew came in and dropped bombs on us.
Drew was dropping bombs left and right. But you know what? You're dropping the right bombs, because the thing is, this is where my specialty lies when it comes to dealing with accountability. And the main thing of it is that these judges have to be held accountable. And clearly, Mr. Drew got the data. So, Mr. Drew, I'm going to have to get with you to get this data. Because, like, to me, the magnifying class needs to go down in Harris County.
Absolutely.
I'm actually disgusted by everything that's going on, because I'm not in Harris County. I live in Atlanta, and we don't have that if you can't make bail, you don't get out. They actually reformed that system, especially here in Fulton County, Atlanta.
Right.
Just to see, and we always know that it hinders those people of Black and brown communities, and of course, poor white Americans as well. So it seems like the system only works for you if you are rich. Man, I can't even say white, but if you're rich, or if you have the means to do so. The fact that half these people probably can't afford an attorney, and the reason why they're committing crimes, or if they're getting caught up in crimes, or if they're getting locked up, how can I say it?
These are instrumental crimes.
Right.
It sounds like these are nonviolent offenses. These are instrumental crimes. These people are doing this because they probably need the money.
Exactly. And most of the time, when people don't have the money to do things, they then lean into criminal behavior. So now we need to look at what can we do to keep so many people from committing crimes. What programs can we put in place?
But you also have to define criminality, right? And so that's one of my arguments as a criminologist. Like, criminality is what defines the crime. But if I'm trying to survive, am I really a criminal?
Correct.
The entire penal code, what I have come to figure out and believe, is that the entire penal code is meant to criminalize being poor.
Yes.
The entire otherizing that is going on with mass incarceration is because of poverty and maintaining the status quo. That's why the entire police force is there, to maintain the status quo. Keep the people with power and money, keep the people without.
But then I find that quite interesting too, because then we had the chief of police, Arthur Acevedo, was going in on the misdemeanor judges, and creating this false narrative that they're just letting people out and they committing crimes, and that's not what was happening. And he knew that these judges couldn't say anything. You see what I'm saying? So I'm about what's right at the end of the day, and clearly with these felony judges, I'm steady on this one. Now, Brian Warren, I've sat in his courtroom a couple times. Brian Warren he's okay, but these other names that you done thrown at, yeah, we gotta look into that.
Well, and I think generally you said it at the beginning, right? Is we can get mad, and I think when injustice is at play, there's a thing that is righteous anger, and we need to have some righteous anger against these judges.
Well, let me ask you this, Mr. Wiley. Can you mention the films that offer insight and perspective into the tenets of restoring justice, and to focus the focus of the mission? Because I want to provide a screen clip of your website.
Yeah, so for Harris County particularly, our homepage, restoringjustice.org, has a good video by Now This about felony bail, and there'll be another one coming out about caseload limits. Y'all have already mentioned one of the other, Just Mercy. Brian Stevenson, his quote is, in America, you're better off if you're rich and guilty than innocent and poor. So to keep that in mind. And then the other one, Dean, being in Atlanta, there's a group called Gideon's Promise that actually trained me to be a public defender. They're really moving this kind of, leading the effort that public defense is the new civil rights movement. And they had a documentary called Gideon's Army. It was done by HBO that everyone should check out.
I heard. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I'm a product. I'm a product of them for sure. So everyone should check that out.
Oh wow!
And I will endorse The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. If you have not read The New Jim Crow, it's not a hard read. It's not extremely dense. It is something that is accessible to people. Like, you absolutely should read it, and you should see 13 as well. And in any kind of, you can get your hands on any kind of criminological theory book, or an intro to criminal justice, or an intro to criminology, I would do so. These theories are real. Deterrent theory, when you're talking about social threat theory, when you're talking about any of those things, they all relate to what this conversation is about. And we have to really have a good understanding sociologically and criminologically when we're talking about what's happening in America.
And if you're in Houston, we've got an entire justice library that has sociology books, spirituality book, all connected to justice at our library at our place on New Orleans Street in 5th Ward. So come on by and grab a book from us.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, we thank you so much again, Drew. And, we'll be talking very soon. And so can you, Mr. D, can you do the honor of our quote for the night?
So our quote for the night says, "Power does not corrupt men. Fools, however, if they get into a position of power, corrupt power." And that's by George Bernard Shaw. So
One
again,
more time. Let's sink in.
Power does not corrupt men. Fools, however, if they get into a position of power, corrupt power. And we're definitely seeing this all throughout what's going on in Harris County. Like, it's corruption at its finest. That's what it seems like. I mean, my mouth isn't dropped, but right now I feel hurt inside to know this is going on, and it's a system that's going to continue to happen until somebody really. Well, we're shining a light on it, but now we have to get people to mobilize to get these people to destroy it, because this is a system that has to be destroyed. You can't just pick out a few people and things are going to change. We have to kind of like this is a system that needs to kind of be uprooted. Otherwise, it's continue to happen. Yeah.
And even our elected officials that are our friends have got to be bold enough to act. And if you go to sign our petition, there'll be clear explanations about the quickest way, hopefully, we can solve some of the systemic problems.
Awesome.
Drew, it was a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
I'm rarely speechless, but like I'm rarely.
We would definitely have Mr. Drew back for sure.
I can't say much because it just, he laid it out
right.
Like, and I'm utterly disgusted at what's going on. Like, Thank you for bringing this forward, though.
And for doing the work and putting yourself, in harm's way, because it seems like this can be extremely dangerous.
Well,
here's the information right here.
My wife isn't always completely secure, but when we got subpoenas serving on both of us in the middle of the start to COVID, it was a unique experience. But that's what it takes. Again, it's what it takes to get oppressives off people's backs, and we're willing to do that. And so I thank y'all for listening and giving the platform and putting real truth to power and allowing this righteous anger to lead to productivity.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, we look forward to having you back to see the status of what's happening, since this interview here, because now that we done shed the light in this, guys, we need you to share
yes.
Live. We need you to go to all of our platforms, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, follow us on the YouTube channel. We need to get this word out as much as possible. Yes, we do. Thanks a lot, guys. Until then, truth to power. Bye.
I ask no favor for my sex. All I ask of our brethren. I ask no favor for my sex. All I ask of our brethren is that they take their feet off our necks.
that little girl was me.